oops, it's being recorded. GG. So you'll have to just click continue if you are online to keep everything going on your end. So this is certainly a topic that we've been addressing quite a bit in the last couple of years. We found that this is an issue that many women are dealing with in all stages of life. In particular, if you're married to a farmer or have your own small farm, large farm, or maybe have an inherited farmland through various life circumstances as well. So we have some polling questions to kind of get us started here. Let's see, Tony, can you put up our first poll question? Sorry, I haven't done this before. Okay, I think the first poll question is, so we're just interested in learning from each of you. Oh, let's see. Gigi, can you help? I don't know what's going on. Let's see here. Okay. So the first poll question is, do you own or rent land in Ohio? So you have several options there. Either you own and you rent, or no, you're just here to listen in on the conversation today. And then the second question is, do you have a farmland lease arrangement? So some of you may have a verbal lease arrangement, others may have a written lease arrangement, and still others might have both or no lease arrangement at all.
So it looks like we've got a variety between own and rent, and do not own. And then as well, you know, what kind of lease arrangements we may have. And so when we do have land and we do have land lease arrangements, we do see a variety of how that is done. Peggy Hall, who is our ag law specialist with Ohio State Extension, would say to always have it in writing, just because of a lot of times the what ifs, and it just helps keep that water clear rather than muddied if there comes up an issue. We realize though that with verbal arrangements, a lot of times they have been in place for a very long time. And so, you know, we never would want to offend anybody in those kinds of situations. But as we see generational shift on farms and ownership of farmland, the attitude towards that agreement being verbal versus writing changes. So one of the things that we discuss in a lot of our lady landlord type programs or lady ownership programs for farmland is just the simple fact of communicating, sitting down at the kitchen table or wherever with the person that may be in the agreement with you, and getting their sense of confidence with you, and continue to build that relationship and rapport, so that if we need to transition from a verbal to a written, we can certainly make that transition. It doesn't say that it has to be, but there are some situations that we're seeing in the court of law that verbal does not always protect the entities involved. So again, going back to written versus verbal is always very, very helpful, just to be clear in what we want each party to understand the involvement of the farm is.
What types of questions do you all have in terms of ownership, leasing land, renting land? What are some of the things on your mind? If you'd like, you can unmute yourself. You can ask a question. You can type one in the chat as well. We have a chat window there. You just go down to the bottom and click chat, and then you can type anything into the chat box.
And this is set up as a discussion, not just a full-on presentation.
Yeah, we don't really have
you to be you. We want you to be involved in the conversation. So please ask your questions in the chat, unmute yourself. I don't know about you, but I am sitting at my kitchen table during this conversation. So let us, let's do that conversation piece.
Yeah, we don't have a specific formal presentation for you today. It was more kind of trying to gauge some of your questions and provide the resources that you might need to help answer those. And as Tony mentioned, I guess I can, until we, let's see, am I still sharing or?
I can see it.
I don't. Okay, it's the Farm Office website.
Yep.
So we do have a number of resources, and if you are interested in kind of looking up what some of these resources might be, if you go to our Farm Office website, and it's just farmoffice.osu.edu, there are so many wonderful resources here. Oops, let's see. I have to share. Let's see if I can. Let's see. Sorry. So if you go to the Farm Office website here under the Ag Law Library, so we do have a whole topic of farm leasing law, and Peggy has some very nice bulletins and guidance here, as well as links to other resources on leasing topics. So if you only have verbal leases, for example, and are interested in putting together a written lease, there are some really great and very simple templates that you can download from like Ag Lease 101. And they're kind of fill in the blank, and you can tailor them to your own specific situation. But these are just some really nice informative documents for you to use. Let's see here. We'll just bring this one up. So creating an enforceable farmland lease, for example. It does go into detail on why in Ohio you should have a written lease, why that protects you as both the landowner and as the renter in the event that, many of our lease agreements have been verbal in the past, a handshake deal. Families have, maybe you're farming with relatives or neighbors or someone who's had a close relationship for many, many years, but life circumstances can happen, and things such as deaths are unplanned, and a lot of things can come up to where you may need to have an enforceable lease where those specific guidelines on that lease agreement are actually in writing.
But let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'll show a couple.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can just share anytime, Tony.
So right now we are working on some farmland leasing series fact sheets. Barry Ward, myself, and Peggy Hall are working on this particular fact sheet here in regards to answering the rent question. What is out there to help us figure out what the going? And it's always difficult sometimes to know what that answer is, because it's always a moving target, and it's quite variable from county to county and even within county. And so, for example, I'm the Clinton County Extension Educator, and I can see about $100 shift from high to low or average to high in our going rental rates. And a lot of that has to do with understanding the nature of our ground. Is it something that is a very good quality soil? Is it well drained? Is it got good soil tilth, good fertility? Is there good records and history of the farm? Does it have good accessibility? Little things like that sometimes can be important. One of the things that's a challenge for my wife and I, we have a small farm. So we have small amounts of acres that are tillable. And so to find a producer in today's farming world that's willing to come in and farm our few acres, meaning less than 50 tillable acres, is sometimes hard to find. And so you're at the mercy of what they're willing to pay to provide service to you for farming your ground. Certainly, we can utilize budgets. Barry Ward puts together a very good set of enterprise budgets that we can at least try and understand what the input costs are and what kind of market we might need to meet the costs of growing a crop. And so we can sometimes utilize that. There are surveys out there. Barry Ward does a survey with agricultural businesses and extension educators like ourselves that are on this program with you. And when we are answering that, we don't necessarily always know what the exact prices are, but we respond to him and at least give him trends. We also can utilize the National Ag Statistics Service that generally will provide a result of a large survey by state, county by county. And again, it's one of those things that it is a survey. So those kinds of tools that we can utilize to gauge where we're at with rent can have some variability because it's no better than the information put into the survey as what comes out. So, you know, for us in extension, it's sometimes hard for us to get the exact numbers from producers, but we know what the trends are. And understanding that, yes, there is always coffee shop talk, but certainly there are other things that we can do, such as kind of understanding what the average yields are in our county to give us an understanding of what the payback is, or potentially is, and those kinds of things. So there's some questions maybe. Pam says we are
We
getting.
do have a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
We're getting older and are having a few difficulties in finding someone to help with intermittent handyman repairs or help with heavy lifting types of chores.
Yeah, finding labor in today's environment can be a challenge, and certainly depending on what those repairs are. If they're on buildings and some of those items on our farm, that's one thing. But if we need mechanical handyman, again, the technology behind some of the newer tractors almost have to go through specific training anymore to be able to work on certain machines. The heavy lifting types of chores, certainly, that's one of those things that if we get into young people that are maybe in FFA or something like that, there are still under 18 youth labor laws that we must follow, and there are only certain tasks that they are technically allowed to do. So what I generally tell folks is, you know, if you go to church, you know, asking people at church or some kind of function like that, that do they know of anybody? You know, there may be someone that is in between jobs and those kinds of things. There may be, you know, someone that is retired but still very capable of handling a lot of those different chores or those handyman repairs. And so it's not always necessary that we need to advertise out there, but by word of mouth is helpful. But it is a challenge anymore, not even just because we may be getting older in life and it's becoming difficult for us to do that, but it's just becoming a challenge to find good types of employees that will, take on the day-to-day grind that sometimes farm life presents itself.
Yes, and we've had some cases too where landowners and their renters, if they'll make special provisions in the leasing arrangement. For example, if the person renting the land or the leasee is going to do more maintenance type projects around the farm, snow removal, those types of things, then they might have, reduce the rent per acre, for example, on that farm. So there are ways that you can build in some of those types of help around the farm in terms of providing a financial benefit for, the renter as well, just as an example. What other types of challenges or issues or questions that you might have about land ownership or being a landowner, renting, any issues that you've had with rental agreements?
We have another question down here that says, one challenge that we face is having neighbors who don't understand land and fencing laws.
Yeah, and again, as we see folks move out to the country, and we're seeing a major shift in, and some of that is going to be attributed to the COVID-19 situation that we're all living through right now, is folks are wanting to get away from the masses of people to better protect themselves with pandemic type situations. And so, again, we're going to see possibly a movement of more neighbors who do not understand agriculture and what entails. And then fencing laws are always a challenge, and certainly it's one of those things that we have fence line laws. There is good documentation and papers out there that, again, Peggy Hall has provided on that farmoffice.osu.edu website. And we really have to understand, what's the purpose of the fence? Is it for keeping livestock in or keeping livestock out? And some of those things, and who has rights to either side, and just understanding that if I buy a farm or I have a farm and that fence is in disrepair, whose responsibilities are in place to fix that fence. And so the fence line laws have changed over the last few years. And so I would just advise you to read up on some of those kinds of scenarios and what those laws say to get a better understanding. And then no matter what, it boils down to communicating with your neighbor, taking the opportunity to understand what agriculture is about, why it's important, and, find that silver line in that discussion if at all possible.
Yes, Tony, and Emily made a note too. Peggy Hall has a talk on that today on Ask the Expert at 12:40. So you want to make sure if you are interested in learning more about neighbors, those who neighbor your land, or neighbors to your land, then you might want to take that in. There was also a suggestion to look to local FFA chapters, that some of those young kids and youth might be interested in helping out with certain chores on the farm. I did put a link in the chat box as well to some of the line fence laws here in Ohio on the Farm Office website.
One of the other pieces we're working on too, Beth, then is, sometimes, maybe we're not the ones directly involved in the farming operation, or we've ended up becoming the person inheriting the farmland. And so one of the things we're working on too are just terms and definitions that are common to that land discussion. and understanding that there's a lot of verbiage out there, and trying to make sure that we understand what some of those things mean. So like when we talk about rent lease agreements, certainly there's the base rent where you are basically asking someone to rent your property for a certain amount on a year-to-year basis. But then there's a multiple different twists and turns to how we can establish those rents. I see more questions popping up.
Yep. So Tony, the next question is, can you speak to the ag district designation and its benefits, why we should take that extra step? Many farmers around us haven't applied for that and just do the CAUV.
Yeah, the ag district is another tool that we have that we can enroll through the county auditor, and it's very minimal and a charge to file that. And so, you know, it doesn't necessarily give you a 100% right to do what you do on your farm, but yet it protects you. Being an ag district, you are saying, I am doing agricultural practices to the best of my ability, following, you know, appropriate farming practice doing so. And so if there was an issue, there is some protection within the core law because you've gone to the extra step of becoming an ag district. And again, we've got some very good literature that gets into that. But you need to check with your local auditor as to the cost. But I believe the last time I looked into it, it was about $25 for the application. And it's a good another piece to have in cooperation or in conjunction with filing for CAUV, which is the current ag use valuation. That helps us lower our tax rates on our farmland and gives us a little bit of a break. Although, you know, in 2012, 13, in that time frame, we saw those figures basically skyrocket, you know, approaching 200% changes over a year in the new calculations from just the standpoint of how that formula applies. But getting back to the farm district question, it's one of those things that can help you maintain the integrity that I am a farmer, we are farming, and we are doing things that are normal for farming practices. So if a neighbor has an issue with the dust or some of those kinds of things, by having that ag district, it kind of helps say that, you know, you knew you were moving into farm country, and when farmers till the soil, there will be dust. So it's just one of those things that helps protect you.
Yeah, especially if you are in a suburban or peri-suburban type area where there's, you know, encroachment from folks moving out to the rural areas and not familiar with all the different aspects of farming and what comes with that. And I did put a link there. It's actually to Ohio Farm Bureau short article on ag districts. Okay, did that answer your question, Elaine? Okay, what other things, other types of questions do you have?
We have a lot of people that have nuisance weeds around and they're not quite sure what to do in their different townships.
Yes, so we do have some noxious weed laws in Ohio as well. Let's see here, we'll go to our ag. Let's see if I can find it here for you.
Yeah, if you want, Beth, go ahead and share your screen. You pull that up.
Okay, let's see here. Screen. Okay, but let's see here. stats. So we have noxious weed laws. Let's see here. And usually the recourse for that is to work with your township trustees. Certainly going to the farmer or landowner that has the noxious weed issue is what we recommend first. And then if action isn't taken, it's actually the responsibility of the township trustees to enforce the weed removals. I'm not sure where that is on here. Let's see here.
Well, while she's typing that in,
Sorry.
if we think about some of the current weed issues we have that are noxious, Palmer amaranth, water hemp are two of the new ones that are weeds that, here's the list, that pose great issues because they can infiltrate and populate a farm in just a matter of a couple years. If we think the female plant of the Palmer amaranth can generate over 1 million seeds by itself, just one plant, certainly if we don't take care of it, those are certainly things that can create issues. And so when we think about ownership of our land, trying to make sure that if we have someone else farming it, that they're taking care of those kinds of potential issues. And as Beth said, our township trustees are to help manage the control of noxious weeds. They have some governmental power. So, and because of Palmer amaranth and water hemp becoming part of the noxious weed list, we in Extension have been working a lot in many counties with our township trustees and educating them what the damage can result in, and as well the role and the responsibility they have as a community leader in helping control those situations. So in Clinton County, for example, I went to one of their winter district meetings, handed them a lot of information, and by doing so, I probably get 15 or 20 calls at least in the fall, like this time of year, and especially because of the awareness that we've made to the Palmer and the water hemp situation, and we have had it. We've never looked into what Palmer amaranth can do. Basically, in 3 years, it can cover up a field and you can pretty much lose your production. It's a weed that came from the south. I have had one situation in Clinton County that was fortunately isolated, but in 2 years' time, it went from a productive field to you couldn't even tell soybeans were in it. Producer was given some guidance from not just the township, but also Mark Laux, our state weed specialist, and how to manage it and utilize the herbicides and other tools of knowledge that we have in controlling it. And we have pretty much stopped the spread of it, but the threat will always be there.
Hey, Tony, we have a couple other questions here. So are there land ownership topics that women are not commonly as well versed in as men? In other words, what are the critical topics that women should understand as they inherit land?
Well, I think, you know, as we talked about the land rent, if your farm is, you know, if you've inherited it and that generation before us was farming it, you know, we have to understand the big scope to, you know, do we want to crop share, meaning we still have control, we help pay for inputs, we get the benefits back from the sale of the crop? Do we just want to outright rent it to another farmer? If we are inheriting it as a second generation, again, I think the biggest thing is understanding I don't want to farm So what are my options? And understanding that it's important to keep that CAUV available to reduce taxes. It's also important to understand if that previous generation was farming, how we handle the sale of all the equipment. I also think that it's very, very important in the discussion, not only for women in ag, but family in ag, understanding the estate planning and those things that are necessary to have in place to help alleviate some of the stress that comes with that transition if it's through death or an unexpected situation. And again, also understanding that there are people we can go to, not only just extension, but understanding the Farm Service Agency, the soil and water conservation districts in our counties, also people that we can go to for assistance. So that you're not feeling like you're left alone out there. Not always knowing everything, but knowing who you can go to get some of the answers. And certainly extension would be one of those.
Very good. Another question, what about for drainage issues? We have issues with the main tile from one of our fields that is supposed to drain in a waterway that's on another farmer's property, but is blocked by silt. We haven't gotten any support from our trustees. Should drainage issues work the same as noxious weed issues, or are they different?
There, a question I would have for you, have you gone and discussed anything with your soil and water conservation district within your county? They can at least help in determining the full scope of the issue. And they also will help facilitate that neighbor-to-neighbor negotiation if there are costs involved in fixing that problem, especially if it's two farmers and the issue may be on one farm versus. It doesn't always get resolved in a clear-cut situation, clear-cut resolution. But that would be where I would go, is directly to my soil and water conservation office within my county and explain to them. They can come out. They would have, especially since there's a waterway involved, they would have probably helped create the scope of that waterway, where it needed to be put in, and possibly work with the contractor who put it in initially to put it in properly. So they would be the person I would go to, or the people I would go to start that discussion.
Yep, I would echo that. Our soil and water office is excellent at helping folks out with similar type situations. We don't have any other questions in the chat box at the moment. So anything else you can think of, Tony, or?
Well, I think, again, we are always creating new fact sheets, and the place I would just continue to tell folks to go to is the farm office website. That kind of is becoming our clearinghouse for a lot of the types of fact sheets that we've been talking about, whether it's having to do with farm production budgets, or what we call enterprise budgets, whether it's agricultural law, whether it is the farm bill and the different things that we may or may not be able to do within the scope of the ongoing farm bills. And those change on a routine basis, but that would be handled through the Farm Service Agency. But Ben Brown provides a lot of information for us and for you through that website as well. And then we are always developing more and more fact sheets that are appropriate in today's agricultural picture as it relates to the land rental discussion, or, you know, just how we are handling our overall estate of agricultural property.
Yep, and I would echo that, but also encourage you to reach out to your local extension office. So whichever county you are in, and get to know your educator there. There are lots of resources that they can provide you, as well as you know, be a sounding board for questions and things that you might like more information on. The farm office. So here we even have things like every year we put out a new, or Barry Ward's office puts out a new survey on cash rents. And so this is mostly on the western part of Ohio, but it could be information that is important to you as well. Now here you can also sign up for emails. So you can sign up here. Let's see, you used to be able to sign in to be on a, maybe it's not there any longer, part of the blog. Another resource to kind of share with you as well is our Ohio Women in Ag Learning Network. So we do have a Facebook page and also a blog site where information is posted. And it looks like this. So if you are on Facebook, search for Ohio Women in Ag, and you can like this page and be contacted when new information is posted for programs across the state and other learning opportunities as well. And Gigi, I don't know if you have anything to add via the Women in Ag Learning Network, or Heather, if you're still on.
They can also subscribe to our blog page also, which we post a lot of the same similar items to the Facebook page also, but sometimes additional things get posted in one place or the other. So you might want to
Check out
be
both.
part of both. Yep. And Heather has put the link to the Women in Ag down in the chat box.
I think, again, agriculture poses lots of issues at times. And so just understanding who you turn to carry on a conversation and feel uncomfortable if you don't always know maybe the exact thing to ask, or you don't have all your own answers. I think that's the complexity of challenges that we get sometimes from folks. And young or old, there are always those questions, and not always have the answers in extension, but we can send you to the right person to carry on that conversation, help find the information out. And just understand that anytime you want to discuss with anybody in extension, the utmost confidentiality is adhered to. So we're not going to say so-and-so was in our office the other day and they have this crazy question or that situation. Just understand. And in my world, you know, the only dumb question asked is the one we don't ask. So feel like you are going to even know sometimes all the questions, but as you tell your story in situations, we can get to what the crux of the issues may be. And owning farmland can be a great thing, but it takes a lot of responsibility and sometimes, unfortunately, a little more cash than we care for when we initially invested in it. But again, it's a great thing to be tied to in terms of farmland. And, you know, as I said, there are always issues that we will be challenged with in our ownership of that, but we're here to help.
Okay, I put a link in the chat box too. So there is a what's called a triple EET for Tony, and in the box, so it's basically a evaluation of extension teaching. So if you don't mind clicking on that link and going to that site, and you have until October 2nd, so about 2 weeks time, to complete that evaluation for Tony. Okay, any other types of questions or resources that we can maybe help guide you to?
I think another thing to share here real quick, as we go back to the poll, some of you maybe did not own property, but maybe looking at purchasing or thinking about that idea of farmland ownership. Again, do your homework. certainly visit with your extension office, the Soil and Water Conservation Office, Farm Service Agency are going to be able to provide you some information, but keep in mind, because that is a governmental entity, there are certain things about a farm they may or may not be able to share in regards to things, but there are informations available. And understanding that you want to, get a feel for what kind of fertility is on that property if you're looking at buying, what kind of drainage or drainage issues. So if you're looking at property, I always tell people, go right after a rain and see how much water is standing on that field 10 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours afterwards, and try and gauge what, some of our issues might be. And I say that more and more anymore, because as we think about our climate and as we talk about climate change, overall the averages aren't changing, but our events are changing, where we're no longer getting a ½ inch a week or an inch a week, but we may get 3 inches in one event and then go 2 or 3 weeks after that before we get any more rain. So those bigger events are posing more challenges on some of our farm property. So if you're considering a purchase, those are some things that I would also look at as well.
Good point. Yep.
Anything else?
Heather says, feel
Heather.
free to join us tomorrow for Planning for the Family's Future with Peggy Hall, and on Thursday for Farm Chores and Children with Dee Jepson.
Yeah, lots of good things out there, lots of good reading material, and certainly we're here to help and can point you in the right direction. So anytime, please feel free to contact us. Again, Beth is in Putnam County, so you can go to putnam.osu.edu. I am in Clinton County, clinton.osu.edu. It's putting my email. You need to put your email in there, Beth, if you haven't. And it does not matter if you're not from our counties. We're here to help, and we can certainly, start fine-tuning the situation into either corrective measures or just provide other guidance and suggestions on may or may not need. So
we also are hoping to provide some in-person workshops next year in 2021 when the climate for those opens up a little more on land leasing in Ohio. So look for those. That information will be available via the Women in Ag blog and the Facebook page and through our extension newsletters and whatnot. So
If we have nothing else, I'm going to end with a quick clip from Ohio Soybean Council.
Our farming operation is located in Delaware, Ohio. I'm a fourth-generation farm. I partner with my stepfather, Brett, and we farm about 3,000 acres. The things Ohio Soybean Council does is important to me because it's an outreach. It makes me feel like somebody's out there putting our best foot forward for me when I'm busy growing the soybeans. I can't be two places at once. I can't run a farm and raise a crop and reach out internationally and globally and prove to people that I grow a great product. Ohio Soybean Council has a lot of programs that help us farmers learn about new things happening in a global aspect and the soybean industry. To me, my soybean checkoff investment means that farmers are willing to invest in our future. We want to maintain that we grow great soybeans, and we're doing everything we can within our powers to do so.
Nice video.
Yeah, and we thank you guys for attending and hope to see you at other OSU Extension events and maybe our kitchen table conversations later this week, tomorrow at 11:30 and also Thursday.
Thanks, Gigi.
Thanks, everybody.
See you then. Thanks.
Have a great rest of the week.